that's just the minutes in the package from the last two Presbyterian meetings. Now I'm bringing for the session meeting today. I just brought them because we'll be in here, I guess. Whoa, got them red socks.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Well, we're getting closer and closer to the 15th of June, and since we're getting closer and closer, there's not that much new from what we've been talking about. Before I start talking about that, then let's go up one and down two. If you can't figure out what I'm getting ready to say is, that's General Assembly of the Synod. Yesterday was Presbyterian, and then the session, right? Or let's start most important. The session's most important, right? Then we moved up. I just wanted to, while y'all all here eating hot dogs and serving food, that's exactly what was happening. It was really exciting to be there. I got up there and helped get it set up for the Rise for Hunger. Rise is a, I guess, national organization. The guy that was working with us in getting this done was from Baltimore or somewhere. But what Rise is a Rise Against Hunger, and there was a packing party yesterday morning prior to Presbyterian, and my guess is there were about 100 people from Presbyterian churches all over. Y'all were here working hard, so there were 100 there, and it was just amazing. Everything that one of the cutest little girls I believe I've ever seen, next to how cute my grandchildren are, of course. About this high with a big pink bow in her hair. But of course, then in order to pack food, you got to put on the food prep cover to your hair. So she had the little net cover over her head, but you could still see that big pink bow sticking up. And what we had was about 5 rows with 3 tables on each row. So that shows you, and about 3 teams on each one. This is a basic food that we're preparing in bags. And it's everything from start to finish of putting rice, you can tell I didn't do this part. I was trying to think of 3 or 4 different, basically grains, nutritious things, then goes all the way through a long process and then down to the long tables with about 30 people on the backside who did the final push down with the hot iron type thing, to seal the bags. But we packed 3,034 meals. In 2 hours, 3,034. 3,000 was the goal, and it was loud and people running in every direction. Particularly this little girl. What she was doing was once she would get 5 bags, there was a tray that they would put them in, still unsealed. Then they go over, put them on a scale, and either add or subtract, or take out with little spoons and things, so that it got to X number of ounces. I've forgotten what it was. But there were 3 or 4 different combinations of things, starting with a corn grain and some other things like that, like I say, until it got right to the tip top and sealed, and to see the activity and see the camaraderie really of all the Presbyterians and Presbyterian churches, Boy Scout troops from churches. This, like I said, this little girl would take that tray and she'd run it over or walk it over and hand it to one of the tables where somebody was weighing it before they gave it to the person who sealed it. It was just an exciting experience. I just wanted to tell you about that because that was a great thing I think our Presbytery was doing.
Where does the food go? Where they
it goes all over the world, really. There were 3 or 4 countries now that it's going to, in some African countries, some South American, Central American countries, but particularly where there's substantial starvation, almost. Like I said, it's a national program. Actually, we raised, I said 3,000. I knew something was wrong when I said that. How about 30,000? I'm just looking at my figure again. 30,000 in 24. We went over about 24. 30,000 bags. About the size of a, I would guess it would be like the quart size freezer bags. Gives you an idea of what, but it is of substantial nutrition. We raised somewhere around $8,000 or $9,000 within the Presbytery to pay for those supplies as well. So that was an exciting part too. Now we'll move up to that highest court of the Presbyterian Church, and that's the General Assembly. We've been talking about different issues that are coming up, and as I said, it's really to the point now where there's really no other than what I believe I mentioned before, commissioners. So I actually I have to get somebody to, in effect, co-sign it. Has to be at least 2 as far as items. If I came up with something new and wanted to present it, it can end up going to a committee and to the floor of the General Assembly. Other than that, though, all the other timelines have now ended for any other submission of materials to come to be discussed and voted on by the General Assembly. So the other thing I was saying is I may be running out of material.
And that's why they have a cutoff date.
That's right. And if you
throw it up for questions, we can fill the time.
Oh, I know that. You can fill the time. That's right. A lot of my questions have been coming from that. But I did want, like I say, I wanted to do that. And the other thing I'm going to do today is to try to put on, I guess, my session and now commissioner hat to encourage you to go to the Presbyterian Church USA website and to the General Assembly website, which you will be able to do on a daily basis while General Assembly is in session. You can go to the website and then immediately go in and you will see, you can watch determine what your interest level is, you can watch every piece of business that is covered in the plenary sessions. Now the preliminary committee sessions, I believe I've mentioned that we're assigned to 12 or 13 committees looking at different issues. So much has changed since this month almost. Not because of items that have come to the General Assembly, but items that General Assembly had talked about looking at or has looked at before. And all you've got to do is see what those were. Look at your morning paper. Look at your television. There's one committee, now the committee I'm on, I believe I've mentioned, is committee number 9, which is the peacemaking, immigration, little small issues, and world affairs. Now, that sounds more robust than it really will be, because that doesn't include, because there's a separate committee on just Israel and Palestine. And there is a separate committee called social justice that actually will take up some of the some of the issues on immigration and on peacemaking, determined by what had got assigned, what the specifics of that particular overture. That's what each idea that's presented, or from presbyteries or synods or from certain committees of the General Assembly that are ongoing committees can have been presenting those. So it, but just on our committee, for instance, just take the word peacemaking. That will take in everything from some domestic issues to some world issues, but a lot of that on the domestic side comes under the Committee on Social Justice, which is dealing with everything from race relations, guns, and what effect that's having. Certainly that was reemphasized again for us. You know, no one knows what the answer to that is, but it's getting kind of regular. And it's not, these are the kind of people that's supposed to have some of that, and thank goodness for them. One of the people that was, I understand, that was, the last I heard at least, they've got a different name, but school resource officer, who first confronted and ended up getting shot, the most serious that didn't, unfortunately, the others got killed, but he had bullets in his chest area and was, you know, ambulanced to a larger hospital like Galveston or somewhere. But they, you know, there's just so much going on. So I can't imagine that committee, and they are going to have more review of issues there. There are no easy answers to that issue, to immigration, or to peacemaking, any of them. When you look at international issues, world issues, one of them that's not directly with us, but again that has broken, of course, is the continued situation with North Korea and the United States, and meetings, and whether it's going to occur or not occur, or whether there are going to be changes. There is so much hope, I think, with what happened by at least North and South Korea. And I'm sure we've got lots of hope there. There were Bill Lancaster, who I think a lot of you know, who has been Associate General Presbyterian, as they called it then, and now stated clerk, has served for I don't know how many years as part of the Presbyterian News Service. He has written articles all throughout his lifetime on different issues coming before the Presbyterian Church, but has also served as one of the main, like, correspondents, if you want to call it, news writers for what's happening at General Assembly. So you may see some bylines with his name on it. But he sent out earlier this week, I don't know whether you got that or not, or whether it was in, I can't remember. I've gotten where I've read from so many sources now where it came from, but it had a conclusion. I told him I wish that would be what I had to read. It was about this long on one page as to major issues that he sees coming before the General Assembly. I've already mentioned, of course, the Israel-Palestine issue. That'll include not just the, in effect, unrest, war, whatever we want to call it. How do you not call that war? Almost right there, just on that one border. We're seeing that all over the world, of course, but that particular issue will be reviewed some by our committee on just under world affairs, just with a couple of overtures directing that. Some of this, though, goes back as much as 3 General Assemblies, and it deals more with what the investments of the Presbyterian Church and of the Presbyterian Foundation as its effects on 3 or 4 issues. One of them, of course, being that, and that always comes up, has come up for the last 3, and this will be, I guess, or maybe the last 2, and this will be the 3rd General Assembly that has reviewed just that particular issue of investments and whether we, as a church, as a denomination, as Christians, should be withdrawing support for companies that are supporting one side or the other. The conflict, a majority of that is support to Israel from the United States and that type of thing. That issue goes over, since I'm talking about the investment side, that goes over to things that include race relations and fossil fuel, and investments in anything that would support some of those type issues. There's a lots of controversy on that, whether we do it. It is not, we've had some minor changes over the last number of years on investments, but that issue continues to come up as to whether we address issues like that. We have one, and this is, you never know what's going to come in one of these overtures. One of the overtures that we're looking at, meaning my committee, is looking at, and guess who it affects? Remax Realty. I said, what? There evidently is a major support from Remax into Israel that is supporting some of the push by Israel into the Gaza Strip. And in there, they're building, somehow, they evidently are marketing for a number of major corporations who have gone in and like that, help push back or knock over the situation in the Gaza Strip. And then I'm helping to sell, rent. I don't know what they're doing. I hadn't gotten the full report on that one. That was one of the, came out though with about 6 presbyteries in support of that. It only requires 2. It requires the initial presbytery to make the overture, and someone else then has to be I've forgotten the term, cooperating, or in effect they put their support behind that particular resolution or overture. So that, I mean, you get some that will come, and I mentioned last time, this will also be the first time we've ever had a consent agenda, which means it's on the agenda, but it is so non-controversial, almost like, do you love God and do you love Jesus, sorts of things. You're not going to vote those kind of down. They are very clear, obvious things that we ought to be doing. And that will hopefully help move business along. I was talking yesterday with Mike Hoyt, who's the senior minister at Fourth Pres in Greenville, who was one of the teaching elder representatives last 2 years ago in Detroit for the General Assembly. And he said, you're going to get used to it, you think, but there's so much happening. It sounds like, why are y'all going up there and spending 8 days? Really 6.5 days on business things, other worship service, election, new moderator, that type of thing occurs in those other times. But he said that 2 days. We have about 2, maybe into the next morning, maybe 2.25 days in the committee to cover. We have 13 or 14 now overtures that my committee will look at. We have 75, I mentioned this last Sunday, I think, 75 members on that committee. Some committees have 23 or 24. Ours is going to be like a convention. Yes, sir.
It's concurrence.
Concurred, that's the word. That's right. I struggle with, there I go, I'm words. Struggling again right now with words like that and what we call them and what other denominations call them. These overtures, as we call them, and that's right, then another presbytery then has to concur for it to even get to the committee. And that may or may not get to that one may not get to the floor. It may get to the floor it would get to the floor either as a consent agenda, or it will get one with recommendations from our committee. Surely with 75 people, and if anybody talks a third as much as I do, think how long that would go on.
Is there a gag order? You asked that. Is there? I'm curious.
What's that?
A gag order? There's
not gag order, but there will be some things where I think once you get to the floor on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then could go into Saturday morning, we do adjourn at noon because everybody's got to check out the hotel. Otherwise, I forgot what it costs per day for General Assembly to meet. You can imagine. We're all looking forward to Sunday. We'll be worshiping in 28 or 30 Presbyterian churches. There'll be like anywhere from 10 to 25 people. Needless, and I mentioned this earlier, as I say, I'm running out of material, so if I keep repeating myself. Ferguson, Missouri. First Presbyterian Church, Ferguson, Missouri was the first one to fill. There are lots of people, just want to, if nothing else, you've seen it on the news, so let me go see what this place looks like, kind of a deal. And some others very earnestly interested in that particular and ministering to that. Each church, I will be going to the First Presbyterian Church of Kirkwood, Missouri, which is just like, would be like going to Pendleton or to Williamston if you lived in Anderson, I guess. Just so happens my uncle who lived there was a member of that church way back. When he lived there, so I thought that'd be interesting, and to be at that church. The other issues that they see that Bill mentioned, in addition to Israel, one of the biggest issues that we do as far as the governing of the Presbyterian Church. There currently is the Presbyterian Mission Board and of course, Office of the General Assembly, and there's been coordination and cross-board members into some of that, and then the Mission Board actually becomes the board of the General Assembly when the General Assembly is not meeting, so there's some cross-action there. There have been 2 committees, one of which Debbie Foster, who is our associate stated clerk in our presbytery, actually serves on what's called the Way Forward Committee.
She's on Vision 2020.
Huh?
She's on Vision 2020.
Vision 2020. Couldn't remember which. Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's Vision 2020, and there's Way Forward, and then there's is that the all
agency review? Yeah.
All agency review committees. All each have different reports coming in. There is there's some butting heads still going on with that, and we'll have to help resolve that. and that is, do we do some consolidation under in our denomination on a denominational basis? Do we leave more of it the way it is? Do we combine? There's recommendations coming from these different committees that were appointed because our presbytery, this time, we didn't, I don't believe, did we concur on any?
We concurred on a few of them.
Well, a few, yeah. But we didn't submit the initial overture. Last time, 2 years ago, our presbytery submitted 17.
I think altogether.
Huh?
Something like that.
Like that, 17 overtures. One of them dealt with the appearance of duplication and lack of organization between. So guess why Debbie got appointed to that committee? The 2020 vision, it means they're visioning ahead to the next General Assembly to try to have all of this worked out. And so we're going to kind of be in the middle of that and making recommendations. One of the things I think that is interesting about General Assemblies is that while I can listen to every opinion in our presbytery, I or any commissioner, teaching elder or ruling elder that represents our presbytery cannot be directed by my presbytery on any issue. We are to prayerfully consider and make an individual decision over the information that we have studied and the information we hear when we are there. And the results of those votes, I'm like everything else. If the Russians know who I voted for Congress, maybe somebody else will know how I voted on these others. But basically, that's those issues no one will ever know unless I tell them how I voted on a particular issue, and they really suggest that you're going to have pros and cons of doing that if you talk to people about what you're going to do or can do. And I have absolutely no idea how I will vote on some of these issues. Because they are really gut-wrenching sorts of issues. And they say a lot about our church and our denomination and where we are headed, how we are addressing major issues. Anything from poverty to, as I say, where we stand on the Israeli-Palestinian situation, whether that's good, bad, indifferent, so forth, and you can hear. I've certainly, Aaron and I have talked off and on, I guess, since I got nominated by our session to be our representative on these various issues. But this week, in order to get, and I saw this as a suggestion somewhere, but it happens that I have had some interaction with Mark Wilson, who y'all may see if you read the Greenville News and some of those. He writes a lot of editorials, who is a rabbi. He and I knew each other and worked on issues both in Greenville and Anderson and others. He has possibly different opinions than some other rabbis. I'm sure he does. Every one of them does. But Wednesday morning at 7:30, I'll be at breakfast with him at IHOP and chat about that particular issue, just to try to get input again. Not that I want him to persuade me, because I just want to hear it. And that was one of the suggestions, that you might meet if you have any contact with a friend who is Hebrew. Then you should find out what they say. And then I'm going to come back and go and sit down with David Bailey at Central Presbyterian Church. I want to listen. David has been a long time. I guess he's at Central, and it comes from a family of, I think, 3 ministers. And I want to hear, again, his thoughts. And Gordon Turnbull, who is from Mobile, but is now the minister at John Knox, and was our minister before as we were moving here. I hope to also meet with him as well to try to gather as much information as I can. And y'all, if you are aware of a particular issue coming up and you have an idea or consideration, I would welcome hearing that from y'all as well. Because I think that's going to be important that I not go with preconceived ideas, that I don't go with, naturally, I say no preconceived ideas. I have thoughts, and y'all know enough about me to scare you probably. But I would welcome that from y'all. It's going to be a interesting time, I'm sure. Next week, I hope by next week, we may have a bulletin insert. I saw the opportunity that I could order those, and I ordered them for our church, so that you will get a y'all should have just not let me teach. You would have got a front and back page probably of a good summary of what's happening in the General Assembly on, again, different overtures that are coming and so forth. As I said, the whole time there will be, online will be various committees. You may or may not hit our committee, I don't know. I'll try not to embarrass you if we are on at that time.
Tell us hello.
I'll say, hey, how's everybody about William? Jim, what kind of deals you got at the Ace Hardware this week? Something like that. Good ones, by the way. I've spent way too much money again. I knew I gave him too much business last year when I got both a note that a lot of people got, I'm sure, and then I got this note signed by this man thanking me for my business. I said, darn, I must have really, if you get 2 Christmas cards, you've overspent. I know that because I was a fundraiser, and if the donors who had made very significant contributions, I always made sure, in addition to the one the hospital sent, that I also sent a personal note signed, in blue ink, so they knew it was coming fresh. Just messing with you, Joe. You know that. But give me, ideas there before I go. Watch us while we're there. If you either want to be edified or bored or whatever, I guess it'd almost be like in Congress and say, how you want to get on and you can hear everything going on the floor of Congress, and whether it's the House or the Senate or whatever. And then on the 23rd, let me think, no, is that right? Yeah, 23rd, 24th, whatever that Sunday is, we possibly we adjourn at noon on Saturday, and my understanding is at that point the post GA, General Assembly, fact sheets will come out as to what happened. And so either that Sunday or the following Sunday, we ought to have a bulletin insert here for y'all to see what the results were. Again, if you don't agree with some of the things that are done, I still won't tell you how I voted. So I can always say, that was horrible, wasn't that terrible? And you'll never know. But there are issues, needless to say, with our church, our denomination, that are very weighty issues, both as Christians, as Presbyterians, and as individuals, that we will be looking at. And I just, again, covet your prayers while I'm there, before I go. Everything from safe travel to gut-wrenching issues that we'll be facing. I'm excited to be going. I come from a family of longtime Presbyterians, and a father who was very, very active on a, particularly when it was still Southern Church or Northern Church. My father was on the General Council, which is 12 people that sort of like the board I was telling you about now, the mission board, that particular 12 individuals tried to at least oversee business between General Assemblies. At that point, it met every year, I think. But I think he was on that 5 or 6 years, I don't remember. And as Jordan can tell you, he would come from Mobile, and that was in Atlanta when the Southern Presbyterian Church was based there. I think in every case, he and Mother would then drive on to the big city of Due West, because we were both at Erskine. And I tried not to talk to him too much about what had happened. If you remember, mid-'60s was another one of those rough times in the Presbyterian Church when the initial, some of the initial breakaway churches then began. And I tried not to talk to him too much because he would tear up pretty quickly, because those were rough sessions. When Reformed seminary started and breaking away from other seminaries and that type of thing, that was in, like I said, 63, 4, 5, probably, when all that occurred. But like I said, I covered this opportunity, and I continue to ask for your prayers. And who wants to teach Sunday school next Sunday? I think I've given you, as you can tell by my rambling today, probably more rhetoric than you wanted to hear, and more conversation about some of these issues, and not enough, and rambled, this definitely falls under that 3 times as much instead of 1, right? That's a secret joke. If you're not in the session, you know that I came with a card and it hadn't done me much good, but I do still have it. I believe I left it at home today, so y'all ain't in trouble. That says, Russell tried to listen 3 times as much as you talk. Go ahead.
Can I make a comment?
You can make plenty of comments. Sure. I've been rambling. I wanted to be interrupted. Go ahead.
The PCUSA is dying, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of large
years.
are really struggling.
And if the General Assembly continues to take the divisive approach to conflicting issues, they're going to drive a good portion of what's left away. And they need to respect the conscience of those grassroots people in the congregations and quit trying to dictate to us what we should believe. I could care less what General Assembly tells me to believe.
Yeah.
I believe what the Bible tells me and what the Holy Spirit leads me to believe.
Right.
And nothing that General Assembly says is going to change my stance or my opinion on what I believe.
Right.
And if I could suggest to you to represent us, that's what you need to think about, and to eliminate the divisiveness to try to maintain what is left, and see we on the local level can follow our beliefs and what we feel like Scripture leads us to believe, and go from there.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that. I agree with you. I think what we are doing with the current stated clerk of the General Assembly and some of that leadership, I think that's probably what generated this idea of, if nothing else, doing it on a more business-like way, in leading the church and not having some of these, again, you're right, a lot of this starts off as grassroots stuff, but sometimes it either doesn't get to leadership in the church, or leadership, like you say, it needs to be, as you said, more go from the bottom to the top rather than the top. Zeroing down and trying to tell us what we believe, what we ought to believe, how we ought to act, and that type of thing. I understand every bit of that, and I think that's all.
And that was the work of our presbytery,
Right.
The last General Assembly.
Absolutely. That's where the 17 overtures came from.
Right. If you could sum it up, was get yourself in order, General Assembly, denomination. Get out of our way, and don't bring up, there's one specifically about, don't bring up these divisive things that, you know what, Presbytery in South Carolina and Presbytery in San Francisco, California are not going to agree with. So someone is going to be ticked off after you have a vote. So why don't we not vote about those things? If we want to lift up, here are some issues that we need to consider, that's fine. But bringing it to a vote is not a great idea. That sort of thing. And so a lot of those overtures were about that. Let's streamline the way that we are General Assembly. There's some fat that needs to be cut out. There's that sort of stuff. And that's part of the, can we combine committees and that sort of thing. And all of those overtures were looked at by General Assembly, and they said, okay, we can't decide this right now. So that's the reason for the Vision 2020 team is specifically looking at what is the vision statement for our denomination, one that we can all look at this and say, hey, yeah, this is what I believe that we're here for, right? And that's the purpose of it, and I think they've done a really good job. We'll be looking at that closer later. The way forward and the agency review are specifically about looking at those overtures that our presbytery sent, saying the way that we're doing things can be improved. How do we get out of church's way? And so that's what they are tasked to do. And I don't know, I haven't seen their recommendation yet. But how do we? I
hadn't seen that final recommendation.
Right. How do we, as a General Assembly, work and do the things that we, on that level, we can do, and we should be doing as Christian Witness, as those sorts of things, which ultimately is to hold up our local congregations. How do we do that better? How do we not dictate, as you were saying? How do we serve the church? So that's really, this General Assembly specifically is making hopefully making some strong recommendations towards that and moving us more towards that.
I'd be real surprised if we didn't see that. As you can tell from the name Vision 2020, is that they realized that wasn't going to be a 2-year process. It would take surely 4 years, so that's when they named it 2020. So that group, there's some thought of combining Way Forward and All Agency and I'm not sure exactly. So they've met together maybe once, trying to figure out whether maybe they ought to be because a lot of those are some similar issues, and they didn't want to fragment that too much. Way over time, but good thought, and thanks again for your comments, and have been praying pretty heavily about that particular idea, that because you hate to see the First Presbyterian churches of Greenville, those kind, no longer part of our denomination because of disagreement or with edicts that come down rather than thoughts going up. Let's close in prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this church and for what it means to each one of us. We ask that you will guide and lead us as we work to love the Lord with all of our heart and mind and soul, and love our neighbor as ourselves, that we will continually pray that your Spirit will work with us, lead us, guide us, and minister us as we relate to each other and to other members of our denomination. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. I'm going to leave that. All this stuff.